Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. I'm Crypto Vatsik, and I'd really appreciate it if you hit that like button to support the channel. And if you find this content helpful, please don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on future updates. As always, this is not financial advice and are my opinions only. All right, let's get into it. Okay, this is going to be an educational video on using head and shoulder patterns in trading, and I cover what they are and how to incorporate them into your trading strategy. Even if you're not actively using these setups for trades, it can seriously help you get out of harm's way or inversely take advantage of a major opportunity. Now, before you go ahead and say you already know what they are, I can bet you there's something in this video that will help you on the next time one comes up. With that said, let's get right into it. Okay, so really quickly, just some context with some theory here for those of you that may not be as familiar with head and shoulder patterns. It's basically a chart formation that appears as a baseline with three peaks where the outside two are close in height or price level, and the middle is the highest, the peak, in other words. A pattern basically used to predict trend reversals and appears as a baseline, or you have a neckline. So it's considered one of the most reliable trend reversal patterns and is one of the several top patterns that signal upward trend, that signal an upward trend is nearing, and it can do the vice versa. It can signal a bottom of a bear trend. Okay, so basically we've got these three pushes up, right? So we've got this one push up, two push up, and three push up with two pushes down. Okay, meanwhile we're never breaking this neckline is the theory. And sometimes in crypto, this is a little bit harder to spot than in stock trading. Okay, so we'll get into that, but essentially identifying this neckline is critical. And these can take many different forms. Okay, the peak can be very weak, the peak can be very, very steep. Okay, the right shoulder can be equal in price to the left shoulder here. Okay, or it can be very weak and it can be on a slant downward. And almost equally or more important than that is this neckline. Okay, so identifying this neckline right here, this guy, identifying that neckline is critical. And I think one of the most common mistakes is assuming that you're going to see a perfect head and shoulders pattern like this. Okay, they're going through the chart. People are saying, well, where's the head and shoulders? What the heck? And they're waiting for that perfect setup that they can see. And the neckline can take different forms too. Okay, you could have a neckline like this, a diagonal neckline that isn't broken, okay, that you have as acted as support, and you'd say, oh, well, this is just a downtrend, right? However, this is more significant of a signal than you may think. So we'll get into that. And then the next thing that is super critical is this break of that neckline. Okay, so once you have that break, that is your ultimate confirmation that you either want to be taking risk off the table, getting out of some positions, and getting out of harm's way, or waiting for some sort of bearish retest to look for a short, but we'll leave that alone for now. Okay, so let's get into a real example here. We've got Bitcoin USD on the 12-hour. This is on Coinbase. And this is back in April of 2021, so relatively recently. Okay, this is the first peak that we had before our all-time high at 69K. Okay, this was that first peak that we had that I think shocked quite a lot of us on this retracement, this correction that we had, and then ultimately making our all-time high. But I think this is a really good example, and we'll get into this here as to why I think this is a great example of a head and shoulders top pattern. Okay, so I think typically what a lot of people are doing first off is they were drawing something like this. They're going, oh, okay, there's a head and shoulders pattern. But they're getting a little tripped up potentially with this overall neckline, right? So they're probably looking at some sort of support resistance level right in here. They're going, whoa, it deviated super far below it here, and then came back up, reclaimed it as support. So it just threw people for a loop, right? We had this major sell-off, and this was actually, just side note, this here was actually a pretty big break in high time frame market structure, right? So basically, if you're just looking at the wave counts here and just higher low, higher low, higher low, steady incline of these moves, this low to this move, this low to this move, this low to this move, and then lower low, right? So these can be tricky. I mean, it's not easy to just go, oh, here's a head and shoulders, I'm going to start shorting right here. You don't, who knows if this isn't just a right shoulder, and if this isn't going to be continuation upwards, right? So that was kind of your, aside from head and shoulders, reason to believe that this could be a bearish lower high and essentially failed breakdown of this trend. Okay, so going back though to the head and shoulders, right? So clearly a left shoulder here. We'll leave this out for now. Left shoulder here, head, the peak, okay, up here, and then right shoulder. I think everyone kind of see that. Yes, the right shoulder was below the left shoulder, which is pretty typical, right? Because it's getting less momentum, it's getting weaker, the trend is weakening, and there are less buyers now at this point, right? So a little bit, buyers are a lot more hesitant at this point, right? And there's maybe some of them are starting to short now instead, okay? However, so the key here is this neckline, okay? So all you had to do was draw it out like this on a diagonal. We'll go right there. And see what they look like from the wicks. Yeah, so I don't love taking, especially if we're using diagonals going off of wicks. I like to use full body candles. And here we go. Okay, so we've got our left shoulder, our head, and our right shoulder, and our neckline. Okay, so and if you go back to the theory that I was just showing you more recently, the breakdown of this neckline is the key pivot. And so right here, it doesn't line up that great. So you could take it, say, right there, right? So you had a strong bounce. It's touching these wicks as well here. Strong bounce on this candle, okay, on May 15th as support. So one last final attempt to hold this diagonal neckline, and then broke down, bearish retest on the underside of this neckline right here, okay, on May 17th. And then obviously we saw what happened after that, okay? So this is quite a slanted diagonal, but this is still definitely head and shoulders. Okay, just a little bit tougher to see, especially when you're talking crypto with the volatility, okay, but it still follows the rules, okay? And so this was your key point when we broke that neckline. And so maybe if you're a little risk adverse, you would have taken some risk off the table when you saw this massive sell-off and this lower low made in comparison to these lower lows here, or sorry, higher low, and then lower low, okay? So aside from that though, if you're wondering on how far these would typically come down, the way that you measure is from the head, the top of the head, the peak, the very peak of the head and shoulders pattern, back down to the neckline, okay? And then a breakdown underneath the neckline should be your target. So let's take it, okay? I just took the same length in price from the neckline down there, and what do we get? Okay, right there. Definitely target reached multiple times, okay? Even deviated below a few times here. So long story short, head, left shoulder, head, right shoulder, diagonal neckline, intact, broke it, key pivot, target, clone of the height of the head, okay? Okay, now what I want to show you is the inverse to that. Inverse head and shoulders, otherwise known as just IHNS, okay? Some people type IC sometimes, but nevertheless, same rules apply, okay? Except instead of peaks, they're troughs, okay? There are valleys here. And we've got, same thing, left shoulder, left valley, left trough, whatever you want to call it. Head, okay? Trough, ultimate valley, ultimate bottom, V-shaped reversal, whatever. And then our right shoulder, okay? All the while maintaining this neckline. Again, now, inversely, that right shoulder we saw kind of weakening out a little bit further below this left shoulder, right? If it's bullish, you could typically see something like that, okay? The right shoulder or the right trough over here typically maybe a little bit higher, right? Because it's gaining momentum, gaining strength, had a V-shaped reversal right here, capitulation event, really reclaimed this, this level, but ultimately gaining strength, and then a break again, that key pivot in the neckline right there, okay, which is ultimately just resistance, as opposed to support in the previous example. And again, it can take many forms, right? We can have this peak this test of the neckline here can be slightly higher on a diagonal, okay? They can take many different forms. So long as you have a clear 3-peak or 3-trough cycle or pattern, they can take many different forms, but they need to be relatively clear. If you're really struggling to try and find it, it's probably not that obvious. It's probably not that significant or powerful, okay? So yeah, as long as you can identify some 3 peaks, and there could be maybe another one over here doing something too, kind of thing, but there should be your 3 prominent troughs in this scenario, okay? So let's get into a real life example. So it's funny because this example that I'm going to pick is actually right beside where we just looked at right here, this high at 65K, roughly 65K, that head and shoulders pattern right here. There was an inverse, perfect example of inverse head and shoulders pattern, but it really choppy. When you just look at like this, you zoom out, and you're kind of just seeing this, and you're just thinking, oh, okay, this could break down, this could break up. Then you see kind of come up here like this, really what's going on. And, not too obvious, but, if you really zoom in and take some closer look at it, it's not that hard to actually identify the shoulders and the peak and the fact that this is a break in the neckline. Okay, so let's just go ahead and draw it out now. Now this first one, very sharp, okay? Very, very sharp, but in essence, there, okay? I'll actually take it from here. Okay. To the peak, okay? So in essence, your left shoulder, okay? Head, okay? You see that? I'll get the neckline here in a second, and then your right shoulder here, okay? Neckline right here, it's on diagonal, okay? So I hope you can see that. Okay, we've got our left shoulder here, head here, and right shoulder here. And it's much more difficult to see this, I would argue, on lower time frames. So I'd like to stick to either the daily or 12-hour, at least the 6 hours. It gets choppy around 4-hour. You probably could have seen this example in the 4-hour. You really got to zoom out like this, right? But really, it's just so much more clear to see on a higher time frame. So anyways, we'll stick with 12-hour right now. We got a left head and then our right, okay? And so what did we see? Well, same thing. We got a peak up here in our peak trough, sorry. And then we've got our neckline right here, this diagonal neckline. And what happened, okay? Right here, this trough actually, right here, peak, and this trough actually higher than the left, right? Because it was gaining momentum, like I said, bullish momentum. Okay, we had our capitulation, this liquidity all was bought up. Buyers stepped in, huge buyback back to that neckline, and then not much of a sell-off, but your last chance to kind of get in before the train took off. And so that's why it kind of front ran people that had orders possibly down here waiting for it to come lower, right? And so then key point here again is that pivot, that break, that confirmation. Okay, this is your confirmation that this is your inverse head and shoulders and breaking that neckline. And let's just see as far as our target. Okay, again from peak trough to the neckline. We'll take it to the neckline. Target almost bang on right there. See that, guys? Bang on. So if you're looking to make an entry right here, candle close above actually temporarily, but there you go. Basically inverse head and shoulders. So anyways, I really want to thank you for joining. I hope that you took something away from this, and I would really appreciate it if you supported the channel, you guys. Thank you so much for joining. We'll see you on the next one. Ciao.